parsing JSON data and building out your models in an iOS app can be really hard. Well, not anymore, because in this tutorial we are going to tackle that and much more. Alex here from Rebeloper.com, and I want you to hit that subscribe button and let's just jump right into it. One of my favorite parts of coding is grabbing all that data and molding it into models. That's what I like the most about handling data. So today I'm going to show you how I do it, best practices, and a super awesome, safe way to decode and encode data in iOS. So let's just jump right into it and make sure you download the resources. It will be a link in the description where you can see all of my resources for the YouTube channel, and there you will find the resource for today. And that resource is basically an Xcode project, and you will see that basically I removed the main.storyboard, as you already know that I do like that. And there's a view controller and the data.swift file. Now in the data.swift file we have all of the JSONs, and if you just scroll all the way down we will have some dictionaries. Hey, that's the surprise for the last part of the video. Make sure to check that also out. So let's go into the view controller, and you saw that I started this video with Safari open, because in the meantime, while we are going to improve on explaining this codable stuff, like how to create models for our apps, we will be using Spark UI and Better Codable. Well, Better Codable is the framework that kind of makes the heavy lifting here, and with Spark UI I added some extra stuff that I usually use on a daily basis. So I will make sure to let you know when we get there. So let's go back to our Better Codable demo. Make sure you download it, the project, and let's take a look at our view controller. And let me just explain before we do that what we are going to kind of model. Well, it's pretty simple. We are going to create a name, so that will be our first thing. And then we are going to talk a little bit about null and missing or new elements. And then what we want to basically do is have a JSON, model for the JSON where we have a name, a username, age, and a list of posts, well, basically an array of posts. Pretty simple, right? So let's dive into it and see what obstacles we might occur, because we will. Let me assure you, because we will. So first thing first, I will just simply comment all of this out, because as you can see there's a lot of lines here, nearly 400 lines, and it's easier for me to, and of course for you to understand, while I just simply comment out and explain. So basic struct, how do we create our models? Well, let's just create a basic struct. Let me just comment this out. This is a name, and we just set these two variables of string of first and last, name of course, and this is how we use it. So let me just comment this out. As you can see, name equals name first last, and then let us just maybe print it out or whatever. Let's just print it out so we can see. So print dot name, and let's just build and run. Now you might argue that I should have used playgrounds here. It's an overkill, but let me reassure you, when we get to the nitty-gritty here, you will see why we also need Xcode here. Of course, we need to import Spark UI and Better Codable also. So there we go. We have our name first and last. So that's that. Let's take this a little bit further, because when you try to initialize this name, you will be asked to add first and last name. So we want to make this a little bit flexible, and that is what we're going to do with the basic struct with initializer. So let's just comment this out, because I'm going to improve upon this struct. As you can see, let's just copy, cut that out with the comments section. By the way, I'm just selecting all the line with command / I can comment or uncomment these lines. And there we go, we have a basic struct with an initializer. So what we are doing here is initializing with a default value, and that is really nice because sometimes we don't want to use any first or last name. We want to make just an empty name so we can use it later on, maybe add some values to it. So this is how it looks like. Let's just comment that out. We initialize an empty name and then give a first and last name. Yeah, and basically that is it. We could just simply print that out again, but we are not going to do that at this time because it's pretty straightforward. Go ahead, if you want to, go ahead and double check on that. Next up is CODABLE struct with decoder. Now, yeah, why do we want to have this? Well, basically because we are most probably going to fetch JSON files, and those are basically long strings that we want to decode into these models. And we are calling this codable, that is codable / decodable, so both of them, and we are going to adhere to them. So let's just dive into it and take a look at some basic examples. So let's go down to 3 here, and let's take a look at our codable name struct. Now this will be a little bit longer, of course. Yeah, we are going to get into really large models, but they worth your initial kind of time and pain to build all of this out. So what we have here is this init from coder, but if you try to type this out, you will not see it because this name struct needs to adhere to codable. That is that, and then we can simply access init from a decoder. Now this will throw an error if something goes wrong, and that is why we are going to do try catch all of these decoding. We will see in just a second, but here let me just explain what we are doing in this decoder, because yeah, all of this could be omitted, but sometimes you might have elements that are missing. So for this, we are using the container. So we are trying the decoder container keys by coding keys.self. Yeah, just copy that out. That's the container. All you have to know about that. And then we want to try the container decode if present. And yeah, we want to set this as string because we do know that the first and last variables are, well, first and last variables, those variables are strings. And yeah, for the key first and last. Otherwise, now this is the secret sauce here. Otherwise, we want to have this as an empty string. Okay, so how do we actually decode some data with this struct? Okay, let's just go all the way up to number 3, and let's just comment out the first one here. So as you can see, we have a do, try, catch here, and we are trying to decode with the JSON decoder. Now the JSON decoder could be initialized as a simple decoder and then set its properties. Yeah, go ahead and check that out. It's available on the net how to do that. But we are going to use a simple JSON decoder. We are going to decode the name, and of course we want to access the self of that struct and the data, JSON name data. So this is from the data struct that I have shown you from the other file. And yeah, JSON name, that's a simple JSON with the first key and Alex as the value, last the key, and the value is null. Okay, so yeah, that is JSON name data. And then we are going to just print the exact name. Now let's just start build and running this and see what happens, and I will tell you in just a little bit why this is entitled exact name. And there we go, Alex Knight. Okay, so why do I want to have this? Because in this kind of JSON name that I do know, because I have checked that we do have our first and last name. But what happens if something goes wrong? And yeah, data structures, they might break, they might change. You might not get the data that you want. So let's just move on and see how flexible our name struct or model is currently. So let's take a look at the second version when we might get a nil for a key value. So let's jump to definition, and yeah, we are just getting the data from the JSON file. So let's go all the way up here, and as you can see, for the last, we have a null value here. So first Alex, last null. Okay, so that is a possibility. So yeah, that is also handled. And if we just scroll all the way down, as you can see, the last, if we are decoding if present. So otherwise we are going to set an empty string. So this is what we can expect right now. So let's build and run and see the printed out. Yeah, nil name first Alex, and the last is an empty string. Now, if you tried to do this without the decoder initializer, then you will have a crash explaining all the stuff, and we will get to handling the errors later down the lines. You will see that, but it's not needed. Effectively, this is not needed. We are always getting some sort of value, and that's really, really powerful to have. So let's take a look at another use case, and that is when an element is missing. So let me just go to our data all the way up here. So let's say we have only our first key value pair. So first is the key, Alex is the value. So yeah, the last is missing here. So let's just build and run, and as you might expect, all of this will be again the same as with the nil value, first Alex, last an empty string. How awesome is that? Now, if you try to use Codable and build out your models without this approach, you know the headache that you might have. And finally, let's just double check if we do have an extra element, a new element in the JSON file. Now, of course, because we do not handle this in the code, we want to omit it. Basically, if we have a middle name here, as you can see, it's Rebeloper, we just simply want to omit it. So this is what we should expect. The first and last name only. So let's just build and run and see how that looks like. There we go. Name, first, last. How awesome is that? So that takes care of basic, how should I call it, codable models. But what if we have some arrays? Because yeah, arrays will be part of your data, your JSON data. And yeah, let's just take a look at the codable struct with array. Now, and this kind of needs a little bit more. So let me just uncomment this from Mark free. So let's uncomment this codable struct with array. So first we have a user. Now we are trying to really create that user. And on that user, we have a name. Let's just comment all of that also out. And we also have a post. How awesome is that? Let's just comment all of that out. And finally, so let's just go through this a little bit. So we have a user codable, which has this name, which has also a codable. And then we want to decode if present as the name. Otherwise, we want to use an empty name. And this is where the empty initializer really comes in handy. Because yeah, if there isn't, then we want to use an empty name. Now, the same goes for the post. As you can see, we have a title and a message, and we have an empty initializer. But now we will have a list of posts. And these posts, yeah, they are optional because there might, let me just go back here. Yeah, they are optional because they might be a nil. Of course, yeah, why not? And that is what we are going to handle. And you can see we have here an empty array, optional elements of array of posts. Yeah, it's a mouthful. And finally, I have just thrown in here an integer so you can see that we can decode those values also. Of course, we can Boolean, float, and so on, and dates and data. Okay, so let's see the use case for this. So let's just scroll all the way up. And now we just simply uncomment this. And as you can see, now we are decoding the user. Let me just build and run and see how this looks like. And yeah, we are printing out the user, or we could just dump the user. And as you can see, here we have this dumping of the user, better codable demo view controller user, and we have the Alex, the last name is empty, Rebeloper, and yeah, all of that is, and we have these two nils. If you take a look at the JSON file, you will see that we have two nils here, and the posts have 3 elements. That's the power of dump. Now, if you just scroll a little bit up, you will see that we printed out the user, and there we go. Name first Alex, last is an empty, Rebeloper 27, and here we have our post, the first post, and the 2 nil values of the post. Yeah, the power of a dump. And by the way, you could just test it out for the JSON with missing element data and the JSON new element data. Okay, now, just go ahead and test that out. And let me just uncomment this and show you what we could do if we didn't have those like decode if present functions. And let me just comment this out and see. This is basically catching all the errors, but yeah, this is just catching the errors. You don't really can do anything, and yeah, much better to use those models that I have showed you. And this is just a simple example that we can use the key decoding strategy to be convert from snake's case. Go ahead and Google that if you don't know what I'm talking about here. Okay, so let's comment out that. And yeah, if you do want to parse JSON, this is all you have to know. Now, I want to take this a step further. I want to have dictionary uses because yeah, JSON is okay, but sometimes you might get data from a server as a dictionary. For example, Firebase. So when you get data from Firebase, you are not getting basically a JSON blob. You are getting a dictionary. So that is what I am trying to solve with the help of better codable / property wrappers and Spark UI. So go ahead and let's take a look at the data file. And now is the good time to uncomment all of these dictionaries. And I'm not going to go into the user dictionary because that's a long thing to do. I'm just going to use the name here. As you can see, some keys are missing. So what we want to do next is go back to our view controller and uncomment the necessary lines. And those are, let's just comment out all of these. There we go. Make sure you leave the last bracket because that's for the view controller. And now let's just uncomment all of this for better codable with Spark UI. So let's just go all the way down there and uncomment that. So what do we have here? We have basically, let's just scroll all the way up. I know it's a lot, but believe me, it handles data modeling really nice. So we have a post here, and then we have a name, and finally we have a user. Now the user has a name, username, age, and a list of posts. Now let's start off with the simplest one. So let's just go all the way up here. And I could start with the post because it's kind of the same as the name. Now, when we declare our properties, now you can see that we have default empty string. Now this is available in Spark UI, and it's using better codable. So make sure that you also have Spark UI or at least better codable added as a Swift package right over there. So now we have a default empty string named title, and this is a string, and as you can see, we don't even have to make this an optional. It will take care of everything. Now just set the title and message, and basically you can be off. This will give the title, if it's missing or if it's nil, an empty string value. How awesome is that? Really nice property wrapper. And we have 2 of them, title and messages. Now, I will explain the rest in just a second. Let me just go all the way down to our name. Again, first and last 2 strings. And if you wanted to, that's okay. This is enough. So this really takes care of everything that you just saw. And finally, we have this user with the name and the post list, like array of posts. Now, let's just take this a little bit further, and I will start off with the post. First of all, here are some keys, extension of the key. Now the key is just a simple struct, and we are adding a new struct of post for the title and message, so we can use them so we don't have any typos. That's that, and we are using this for the name and the user also. Now, what do we want to do? Well, first of all, we do want to have an initializer with an empty value, but we also want to have an initializer, let's say, with only the title or only the message. Now, this is what we have to do. We want to set this to an optional, so the title or the message, and set its default value to nil, where all of the elements values should be nil, because if we just omit everything, then we will have a default value of this post, which is, here we are adding the default values. Well, title will be an empty string, and also the message. Now, this string.empty comes from Spark UI. We are just having this as an empty string initialized. Yeah, how cool is that? So next up, when we do get our Firebase data as a dictionary, we want to also grab that. So we are having another initializer here, and again, we are defaulting to an empty string as usual. Now, that is pretty awesome, but what about when we want to use that data, let's say in our code, or when we want to upload to Firebase? Because, yeah, on Firebase Firestore, we want to upload a dictionary, not a struct or a codable. So when we do want to use the dictionary as the struct, the initial struct, then we can use this as mapped to false. Now, this will return the keys and the values. Pretty simple. Now, if we set this to true when we are using it, then we are going to return. Currently here it's the same, but let's just jump right down to user, because you will see the difference. Because now in user we have something called name, and that will be a struct, a codable struct. And that's not the dictionary. So what we are doing is going into the names mapped dictionary, and we are adding it as a value. The same goes for the array of posts, but in this time we are going through the post with a for loop and then adding that to our key value pair as the value. And basically that's it. One thing to note here is this struct default empty user strategy. Now this comes from better codable. We are just setting the default value of user as this initialized user with, we are just initializing it. We are with the default values. So this is just going to just make sure that you just set this, and we are type aliasing as default empty user, because let's just see here. We have, when we are initializing, as you can see here, we have our name, a post, and we want to have that as a default empty name. There we go. So we want to use the default empty name whenever we want to set its default values of the name, which is with the initializer. So basically that is it. Coding and decoding JSON files, dictionaries with the help of Spark UI and better codable. Now you know how you can build out these awesome flexible models to parse JSON data and much, much more. Now I want you to hit that notification bell, because in the next video I am going to talk about UI color. That's right. Now while you wait for that, make sure to check out these videos as well too. I talk a lot about Swift UI and UI kit in general. And as usual, I will see you in the next one.